Hello, I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle. You are listening to or watching Radio Maine, where each week we explore and celebrate creativity and the human spirit. We are sponsored by the Portland Art Gallery in Portland, Maine. This is the 23rd in our solo series. Today's reflection is called Holding the Unfinished. For much of my life, I believed that things mattered most once they were resolved, finished, clearly named, and wrapped up. I was trained to look for closure, for answers, and for plans that led somewhere definitive. Medicine reinforced that instinct. We were taught to diagnose, treat, and move forward. Even when outcomes were uncertain, the structure of the work implied direction, a next step, a goal. But over time, I learned that much of life does not resolve neatly. Some things remain unfinished, not because we failed, but because they are still alive. I saw this with patients whose conditions improved slowly, unpredictably, or not at all. Healing did not follow a straight line. Conversations continued across years. Meaning shifted. What mattered most wasn't resolution, but relationship. I also saw it in grief. Loss does not conclude. It changes shape. You don't arrive at the end of missing someone. You learn how to carry it and how to live with something that remains incomplete. For a long time, I tried to rush that process. I thought acceptance meant closure. What I eventually understood was that acceptance often means learning to hold what cannot be finished. Creative work taught me this lesson again. When writing or recording, there is a strong urge to polish, finalize, and move on. But some ideas resist completion. They return again and again, asking to be revisited from a different angle. Some of my most meaningful writing has come from allowing drafts to stay open longer than was comfortable, from trusting that not everything needs to be resolved in one sitting or even one season of life. The unfinished is not a flaw, it is a signal. It tells us that something still has depth, that we are still in relationship with it. In leadership, this can be uncomfortable. We were often expected to offer certainty, to provide clarity even when clarity hasn't fully arrived. But the leaders I trust most are those who can say honestly, this is still unfolding. Holding the unfinished requires humility. It asks us to tolerate ambiguity, to stay present without forcing conclusions. It also creates space for others. When we stop insisting on immediate answers, we invite collaboration. We allow ideas to mature collectively. We make room for perspectives that haven't yet emerged. I think this is one of the reasons why the Bountiful Path resonates with so many people. It doesn't promise solutions. It offers companionship in the middle of things. It honors the fact that many of us are living lives that are meaningful precisely because they are not finished. We are still becoming. There were patients I worked with who never arrived at the clarity they hoped for, but they found something else instead. Steadiness, understanding, and a sense of being seen. That mattered. There are professional paths I walked that didn't lead where I thought they would, but they taught me how to listen more closely, how to recognize when it was time to change direction and when it was time to stay. Holding the unfinished also applies to how we see ourselves. We are not required to have a final version. We are allowed to be in process, to change our minds, to grow beyond earlier definitions. When we release the demand for completion, we gain resilience. We stop measuring our lives solely by outcomes and begin to value attention, presence, and care. So here's the invitation for this week. Notice where you are pressuring yourself for closure. Where are you insisting on answers that haven't yet arrived? Where might it be kinder and wiser to stay with the question a little longer? Try holding the unfinished without judgment, not as a problem to solve, but as a space to inhabit. Thank you for listening to this episode as part of the Bountiful Path, a Radio Maine series. If reflections like this resonate, I invite you to join me on Bountiful Path on Substack, where I write about creativity, leadership, medicine, and the lived experience of becoming over time. I'm Dr. Lisa Belisle. Thank you for listening to Radio Maine. May you find steadiness not only in answers, but in your ability to stay with what is still unfolding.